It's your weekly breakaway for fun conversations on pro cycling and so much more. Join us as we go beyond the slipstream. I'm Matt Harper, and together with my brother Justin, we'll do deep-ish dives on bike races, movies, bands, and all manner of shiny pop cultural objects. Oh, and did I mention bike races? We're kind of obsessed. Allez! Hello and welcome to Beyond the Slipstream. I'm Matt and this is my brother Justin, and today in our first segment we are finally talking current professional bike racing with our preview of the Women's Tour Down Under, which begins in a mere 5 days. Then in our second segment we're going to look back at the glory years of one of the biggest and wealthiest teams in the pro peloton, Team INEOS. While 2024 was for them a season to forget, most of us can remember the fairly recent dominance of the team when they were called Team Sky and won 7 of 8 Tours de France between 2012 and 2019 with 4 different riders and 5 additional Grand Tours between 2011 and 2021. And finally, at long last, we're finishing up our 6-episode deep dive into HBO's groundbreaking police drama, The Wire, with a talk about our favorite characters, scenes, and storylines. And as we do each and every week, we'll finish the show with the Broom Wagon. Allez! The 2025 pro cycling season begins for reals in just 5 days with stage 1 of the Santos Women's Tour Down Under, a flattish stage into Snapper Point in the town of Aldinga, a suburb of Adelaide in the southern region of Australia, which should be the season's first sprinters showcase. Unfortunately, the women are only given 3 days of racing at this event, while the men race for clear evidence that while we've been steadily making progress on the women's side of the sport, there's still a long way to go. Nevertheless, this event is celebrating its 25th year this year, and the women will climb the iconic Wollonga Hill on day 2 before finishing out with 5 laps of a circuit course just outside of Adelaide in Stirling on day 3. Justin, it's finally here, the 2025 pro cycling season. How pumped are you for this race?
Very much so. It's funny. I was talking to somebody last night, and I was like, yeah, we've been doing this podcast for like 2 months, and there's finally going to be cycling to talk about. So, yeah, no, I was, watching a lot of highlights, and I think it's kind of cool. I think it's cool how they treat this race, that there's a little more love given to both the men's and the women's side. And I dig that about this race, as far as how they treat the riders kind of equally, which is pretty awesome.
You mean outside of the fact that there's 3 stages for women and 6 for men?
Yes.
Agreed. And notably, it's the first World Tour event in history to give equal prize money to the men and the women, which I think is amazing. So good on them for that. I have to say, I find like the quality of the package that you get from the Santos Tour Down Under organization, or whatever organization is that puts that race on, to be pretty damn good. Like all their little stage previews and all that kind of stuff is like very well rendered, and it's good material to get you primed.
And it feels like a bigger race for a smaller race. You know what I mean? Like, the media, you're right, the digestible media is really well done. The highlight packages are really well done. Even things as simple as the website being very easy to navigate. There's a lot of things like that throughout the year where you go to some of these smaller races and there's just like not a lot of information outside of your start list.
Or it's like a European race that's like done by Flanders Classics, and it's geared much more to a European audience. And yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, basically, it's what the Tour of California should be. Like that's a success story. Started 25 years ago, and it just built and built and built and built, and now it's like locked in. It's not going anywhere. And it's just a shame that some of these American races have not been able to capture that kind of success.
They've done a smart thing too by where it is in the calendar. They've taken a spot that would you would think would not be very, you know, usable, and they're turning it into something. They're making it an event. You know what I mean? They're going. It's like we're making this the kickoff to the season,
It's
and
fantastic. They're
it's
playing to
just.
their strengths.
I'm sure they have somebody great that is involved in their marketing, and hats off to them because I personally just think they've done a great job with it.
Yeah, it's interesting too that it's just like, you think of it, it's like the big Australian race, but really it's held in like a tiny, like less than a half a percent area of Australia. It's like one tiny little area, but it's really cool. That area is like a big wine region. And uh, it's just, yeah, the whole thing is cool. I mean, I would absolutely love to just like have a 2 week trip to Australia sometime that encompasses the entirety of that event and just like hang out in that area and go to wineries and, you know, do cool stuff in the area while taking in this badass bike race. I mean, that'd be phenom. So, yeah, you want to get in, kind of go through the specifics of the stages here, and then kind of get into, well,
Sure,
what our hopes are.
sure.
So yeah, as I said in the intro, you got like a sprinting stage on the first one, and then you got the iconic Wollonga Hill climb on the second one, and then the third one looks really cool with the like 5 laps of this like very hilly circuit that should be gorgeous. The environment should be gorgeous that they're riding through, but cool to a lot of times they'll use the Wonga as like the coup de grace on the last stage. So they're doing it on the second stage this time. I don't
Kind
know.
of
They'll
making it
sort
a
of,
queen stage.
yeah, sort of switch up the dynamic of the race a little bit, but
Well,
it's always super
me.
exciting.
I love a circuit, so I think especially in these races where you don't have a lot of. It's not the Tour de France. You don't have 21 days. I think that a circuit is really really smart way to get fans involved and keep the energy high. Physically at a race.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was watching a couple of guys. I think it was Stuart O'Grady was getting interviewed by Mitch Docker on some video I saw, and Stuart O'Grady's he's like the race director now. He was a former rider, and Docker was talking about like how they've just really tweaked out the fan experience so that the racers it's like the racers come by, you have enough time to like go and like get a bathroom break, grab a beer, get back to your spot, and like boom, they're going to be coming right by again. Like they've got it worked out
It's
perfect for the fan.
genius.
Yeah, that would just be so cool to just be there anywhere along that loop and just hanging out and partying and watching all the action. Um, so yeah, and then of course, like Wollonga Hill has become one of those. It's like one of those moments in the calendar. It's like one of the things I love about the cycling calendar. There's the Wollonga climb. There's always going to be the Flesh Wallone, the wall at the end of Flesh Wallone.
Yeah.
There's always going to be there's going to be the
I mean, that's what makes
Poggio and MSR.
iconic climbs, so good is the fact that you get to see them over and over and over again. Ventoux is one that always comes to mind. So
Yeah. Did you
yeah,
go? Did you watch the one video that they put out about like the history of it now that it's the 25th anniversary? Did you see that one? Like the website for the thing had in and
I'm
amongst.
90% sure I've digested a literal metric ton of media this week. So
Yeah, it was really it was like they basically sort of had just like a compilation video of like little chunks of video of basically every significant thing that has ever happened along the way of that race coming going from its creation to with like nice little graphics on it and everything. There's just like a bunch of cool stuff. I mean, the things that stand out to me more on the men's side is like the Richie Port winning Wollonga Hill, I think 6 times in a row, 5 or 6 times in a row. Um, and I can remember seeing like the last two of them. I think is when I was kind of dialed into to watching it every year, and it was pretty awesome to see that. I think what happened is like he won it for the sixth time in a row, and then the next year he did not win and only he like just barely got beaten, but he won the overall jersey, so like he won the whole race anyways.
The ochre jersey.
The ochre jersey, yeah, I love that ochre. Um, but and then the other thing is you have to go and watch. And I'll mention this again next week when we're talking about the men's race. But the shoot, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a absolutely classic stage of this race early on. It was in like 2002, I think, where dude's bike broke down. One of the riders' bike like broke down, or I know a motorbike crashed into him and crashed him off his bike. He gets up, tries to get on the bike. The bike's not working. The chain is off or whatever, and there's this iconic throwing his bike onto the ground. And 2 seconds later, a spectator on the side of the road just happened to have the exact same bike that they had. He runs over, puts the dude on the bike, and like literally gives him a push off as he watches his own bike just like ride off into the race. And I won't spoil what happens at the end, but you must watch that.
All right. I will definitely watch that for
Must.
next week.
So, anyways, all right. So getting into the race proper. One thing I'm kind of bummed at is my girl Sile Utrup Ludwig, who's going to be riding in support of Cassia Neva Doma this year, is not going to be back at the race. So a little disappointed. In fact, yeah.
I
So,
would
but
I'd have to imagine that, people that are not here, it has to do more with what their goals are for the year, and that,
of course,
because obviously I think, traveling to the other side of the world in January, and it's going to mess with where you peak, and so, depending on what the goals are, it is, I'm sure it has more to do with that than it does with anything else.
yeah. I mean, and you can see that none of the like absolutely top names in the women's peloton are here. I mean, there's no Lada Kopecky, there's no Lorena Vivas, there's no Mariana Voss, there's no
Which is
Demi
definitely a
Vollering.
little disappointing. I mean, you would think that somebody like one of those riders would pop through.
I think it's like I was saying when we were talking about like the U.S. national, like the U.S. national champions. Like I think racers reach a certain point where it's like, nah, I don't really go to that race. It almost becomes like second tier amongst the top end peloton in a way, which it's not really a second tier race or whatever. But um, you know,
I don't
I
know.
I, I,
In,
I don't have an
Ineos isn't
expectation
treating it
to
like a
see.
second tier race this year. I can tell you that.
No, I know, but I'm just saying I don't have an expectation to see the biggest names in the peloton on the men's or women's side dropping up at the Tour Down Under.
Yeah, this is
Um,
true.
that
I'll give you that.
that that said, uh, Stile will not be there for Team Canyon SRAM, but our girl Chloe Dygart from the USA will be one of two American riders
Yeah,
at the race.
and they'll have Neve Bradbury as well, who's also amazing.
Yeah. So should be a good race. I think Justine Gurka, no, Justine Gakire, I think is how her name is pronounced, from AG Insurance, is the defending champion, and she will be there to defend her ochre jersey. Um, so that's good. You got Ruth Edwards from the United States, at the helm of the human powered health team. Um,
The winner
Liv
last year
Alula.
was Sarah Gigante.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Justine Gurka Gakire won the last stage, I believe. Like in a big win. Um, the hometown team is Liv Alula Jaco. They've got Amanda Pate, who I saw just won the Australian National Criterium, which is like kind of a race that's sort of tied into the Tour Down Under. It's part of their whole series. So she is on fine form, and she's got Georgia Baker, Ruby Roseman Gannon in support of her. So we'll be looking for good things from Amanda Pate.
No, I agree with that. Agree with that.
You got Amanda Spratt, three-time winner. She's going to be there again, although she's riding in support of Clara Caponi for the Lidl Trek team. And that team also has Neve Fisher Black. It's weird. It's kind of like hard to talk about expectations from a lot of these riders because it's the first race of the season.
Yeah, you
Like
have no baseline.
nobody knows what their training has been like or anything else. But yeah, all in all, super stoked. Three great days, three very different days. We'll kind of get our feet wet with the sprint in the beginning, and then yeah, onto Wollongong Hill. So, you got
I
anything
just
else about
I just
this?
think it's great that a week from now we'll be able to talk about racing that has happened.
Yeah, yeah, 5 days from now.
Yeah, no,
So,
it's true. 5 days.
I will have to be watching it in replays, at least on Thursday and Friday. I'll probably watch it live on Saturday, but yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how our viewing habits and the timing thereof go when all of this
It's
gets
gonna
rolling.
it's gonna be it's because it's obviously the other side of the world. It's gonna be hard to try to stay up and watch it. I'd love to, but I'm just
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. It's going to be at a different time. Wait, so what time
it,
will so if it
it'll be
starts
like after
Thursday
midnight.
on Wednesday after midnight, or will it be on Thursday after? It must be Wednesday after midnight. Like if we
Wednesday
wanted to
after
watch,
midnight
yeah, if we
because
wanted to
they're way
watch live.
ahead.
Oh, so maybe when I get home, I could watch it. I don't know. I'll figure it out. We need to put a pin in it there, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about Team INEOS. See you in a minute. Team INEOS had a season to forget in 2024 with only 14 overall wins at the World Tour level. Things looked promising early on, with Tom Pidcock finally getting the Amstel Gold win that he'd been so close to winning previously in early April, followed by a GC win for Carlos Rodriguez at the Tour of Romandy later that month. Things looked to be going well a week later when Jonathan Narvaez took stage one at the Giro d'Italia, giving the team the pink jersey. But it only lasted one day as the unstoppable Tadej Pogacar ripped it from Narvaez's back on stage two and held it all the way home for the overall GC victory. 2 weeks later, Pipo Ganna took the win in the ITT on stage 14. But after that, things turned grim with only two more World Tour wins for the rest of the season and none after Ghana's July 6th ITT win at the Tour of Austria. But in the not too distant past, the team, which was called Team Sky from 2014 to 2019, was a Grand Tour powerhouse, winning 12 Grand Tours in a 10-year stretch, including 7 Tours de France with 4 different riders. Justin, your pro cycling fandom began after the team's era of dominance ended. What stood out to you in your research about the Team Sky glory days? And can you give us your answer to the question many TV viewers asked during that time? Was the Team Sky mountain train as boring as it was effective?
Was definitely effective. I don't know. I don't. I would definitely wasn't bored watching highlights. I can tell you that. Uh, I think the thing that impressed me so much is how what they did all those years ago in the way that they set their goals ahead of time and then really worked their marginal gains philosophy. It's how everybody races now. I mean, the whole pro peloton has adopted that same philosophy. So, critics be damned if they want to talk shit on it. The reality is they're all doing it. They've all in this, in the supposed post doping era, they're all into marginal gains. They're all trying to figure out the technology. So Team Sky started all of that. And it was neat to see how it went from where they started to where they end and how successful it was and how when any of their riders would kind of dip off, there was another rider there to kind of pick up the ball. It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, marginal gains is like one of the huge catchphrases that you can associate with this team, and you're 100% right. I mean, they were absolutely groundbreaking. You gotta give them props too for coming into the arena and just straight up stating from the jump, this is specifically what our goal is. We're going to make this very public. We are going to win the Tour de France with a British rider in the next 5 years. Boom. And they put a massive amount of resources behind that, and they hit that goal in 2 years. I mean, talk about mission accomplished. I mean, they were already on to Chris Froome. They got more than one Tour de France win with a British rider in the first 5 years. Um, and you know, yes, there was a criticism back then, like the Sky Train was sort of one little aspect of that marginal gains thing. That was like one little piece of the puzzle they did. But for the fan watching bike races, it was kind of boring. Like a lot of times it was just like, oh, Team Sky's on the front of the race controlling things, and that's just going to be how it is. And I mean, they would have 5 and 6 riders just chugging away up that mountain day after day after day after day for 3 years straight. That was the picture. And, this past year we sort of swap that kind of thing out for a whole different kind of boring on the men's
Yeah.
side, which is just like 70K break away from Tadej Pogacar, and we're just gonna watch him ride by himself for 70K. So I mean, but yeah, but a pretty incredible story of that team.
And it it's cool to me how they evolve over that decade, and I guess one of the things that I was surprised about was when they get to Geraint Thomas's win and how he really wasn't supposed to win. So the fact that he does, the fact that like he's able to pick up that ball and take the yellow jersey in the Tour de France is career defining for him, and it's a testament to the team that was built that he could step up and take that jersey.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Geraint Thomas, that makes me think of him leading out Mark Cavendish in the Giro a couple of years ago.
I mean, that's his
Which
mate.
which then makes me think of something that I really I missed as like a live watching fan back then, which is the first Tour de France win with Bradley Wiggins. I mean, that that race is absolutely insane, and at the end, you get. I mean, Cavendish comes to the team that year and happens to be wearing the rainbow jersey that year. So now you've got old Mark Cavendish, British, royalty, coming to the British team. You got Bradley Wiggins primed to go out there and win the race, and he goes out and wins the race. And then on the very last day, sort of like Aaron Thomas in the Giro, old Wiggins himself in the yellow jersey with his bizarre yellow helmet with no holes in it goes out, leads out Mark Cavendish for a Champs-Elysees Tour de France win in the rainbow bands. I mean, it
Yeah.
really doesn't get better than that. And I was like, I'm so bummed that I missed it. I came on board in cycling the year after Froome got his first win when he in 14 when Nibali won because Froome crashed out. So I didn't even know from Chris Froome when I started watching. Everybody's talking about, oh, Chris Froome, he lost. He's crashed out, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't know who that dude was, but. Um,
I
but
mean,
I was.
that year that he crashed out is, he probably would have won that year if it hadn't been for the wreck.
Mhm. hmm Which is interesting. Another cool thing I saw in that first Wiggins Tour de France was how um, there was, I think it was stage 14, some spectator threw some carpet tacks out on the thing, and there was a bunch of riders that
Yes.
ran over tacks, and Wiggins commanded in the yellow jersey, played his part as the commander of the peloton in yellow, like, nope, we're not racing, we're letting those guys catch up with us, everybody just slow down, race underway when all this, and it reminds you of like some of the sporting moments, like when, the Jonas Tade
The
fist bump
handshake.
when you had it, yeah. So that was a nice little detail
I mean,
in that one.
that's one of the things that I love about cycling. I was just talking about that last night with somebody when I was talking about the podcast. It's those moments in cycling that make cycling so damn good. You know, it is. It's what has really really made me fall in love with this sport is the sportsmanship, side of it.
Yeah, yeah, really awesome. So during the during the Froome years, especially for his second, third, and fourth wins, that's when I was like really, really diving deep into cycling. So, in a lot of ways, Chris Froome is as locked up in my psyche, as formational as Lance Armstrong is in a lot of ways. Um, and I like the guy. I mean, I think he's a likable rider. I mean, he's not a crazy guy. He's kind of a calm, methodical guy, but very astute. Gave great interview back in the day, and a lot of I like a nice like analytical interviewee at the end of a race, and that's exactly what he was. And he just had his thing dialed in, man. He was
Do
doing
you
his job.
do you think that the rumors that swirled around him, because it was the end of the doping era, do you think that they were justified? Do
I
you think
think
that?
I think it's pretty clear that there was definitely some kind of like substance things happening with that team. And I would guess, as is so often the case, it was probably happening to a degree around the peloton. I mean, that is the era when the biological passport was being developed. Um, the one thing that he got accused of, it was like tramadol or something like that.
Definitely
To me,
tramadol.
yeah, to me didn't seem like I don't think it's that big of an issue. I don't see that's giving anybody that big of
It's
an
not blood
edge.
doping, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
It's not EPO.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really have much of an
I
issue
He's
with
always
it.
seemed like a good guy to me. I've never got you're right. He's like the quiet reserve type.
And he's also an insanely hard worker.
Hmm.
And that was the same thing with Lance Armstrong. I mean, it's like you say what you want about them, but like they put in the work. I mean, they were there on the bike on the mountain winning the race. Like, that,
I
you
know.
know,
It always goes back to my same argument about doping in any sport. It's like whether they doped or not, they still did the thing. They still won the race. They still hit 100 dingers, whatever it is that you want to say. They still had to do it. You know what I mean? It
yeah.
wasn't like
And
the
that,
substance made them gave them the ability to do it. No, it just enhanced their already raw ability.
and to a tiny degree. I mean, that's the thing. Does Barry Bonds hit all those home runs without like taking steroids to make his muscles bigger? I don't know. Maybe he does. Like, who freaking knows? But I mean, he still would have been a gargantuan monster of a person with giant muscles because he freaking worked out all the time. You know what I mean? So, uh, anyways, let's not get
Yeah.
stuck on that. The thing that stands out for me about Chris Froome, I remember this happened like right after I moved back up to DC. It was his last Grand Tour win, which was the Vuelta, where he had this like mythical attack. It was in 2018. Um, he did this mythical attack where it was like Floyd Landis when Floyd won the tour, where he had been down, like he had a terrible day and he lost like 10 minutes. It was the same deal for Froome. He had this like insanely horrible day. He went from winning to nothing, and did this 80K solo adventure and managed to put a massive amount of time in the peloton. I think he grabbed the lead right back from Adam Yates or something. It was pretty epic. Um, and then you see the team just like kind of looking like it's just going to be unstoppable for years and years, and then slowly but surely they get these little bits of misfortune, specifically Froome's big crash, and then right behind that, Egan Bernal's big crash, and both of those crashes turn those guys into a
Different
shadow
riders.
of their former selves, and they just
I
they
don't know.
they just
I
bad luck,
mean,
and
Froome's had very, very limited success, but I think that fall from grace was much more prominent in Egan Bernal. I mean, I feel like Egan Bernal just like he's constantly around, but never in the mix.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't know. He did better last year. Like, who knows what's going to happen with him this year? It's going to be very interesting. I have my doubts that he will ever win a Grand Tour again, but maybe. I wouldn't say I don't see it happening, not with like the big four as it is right now and everything. And it's really like it just seems weird. The Chris Froome crash just seems like that's when things started rolling downhill, and like they still achieved a lot post Froome's crash. I mean, they well, I guess his crash was after Geraint Thomas won in 18, so they got two Giro wins, an Egan Bernal win, and a Teo Gegenhardt win, and and a Tour de France win with Bernal. Um, but it just seems like the handwriting was already on the wall. I don't know. It just seemed like
I mean, when you
things
have, I
changed.
mean, it's what happens with any dynastic, thing in sports. They start getting older, and replacing the parts. If you're not replacing them with as equal as good parts as what you are, it's going to make it hard. I mean, look at the Patriots of the early 2000s and their dominance, in football, and it could be said for you've watched it happen with the Yankees. It's just what happens. You get a bunch of good players that are all working well together, and you're going to get an amount of time out of that before it starts to get tweaked, and you lose this piece and you lose that piece. Where guys that started in that era are now retiring all over the place. Luke Rowe's retiring. This is probably our last year for Geraint Thomas. I mean, who knows? I mean, how much more time does Froome have left in the pro peloton? So, all of these
Yeah,
guys. I mean, Bradley Wiggins been out for years.
yeah. I
So,
mean, when it comes to Ineos, I don't know. It's not looking bright for them right now too, because they lost Adam Yates, Sivakov's gone, Danny Martinez is gone, Pidcock's gone. They've lost Dan Bingham and Rod Ellingsworth, two of the architects of all that over the years, and they have reached out to some big riders to try to get him. They made a play for Remco. He's not interested. They tried to get the guy Pablo Castrillo, the dude from Kern Pharma that like inexplicably won two Vuelta stages last year. He turned down to go to Movistar, which might be a Spanish thing, but
I'm
does
sure it's a
not
Spanish thing.
bode well. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to
They
watch
do
Ineos
not.
Flash.
They do not have the cachet that they had, years ago. That's for sure. So, but I mean, if you're an up and coming rider and you see a team on the decline, do you really want to be there? Whether it's Ineos and they've got a ton of money or not, like
Yeah,
these guys want to
it's
win.
it's tough. It's tough. Tough seeing the team with that kind of history and cachet and former cachet and all that money sort of floundering around in the Cofidis level. But we need to leave it there. When we come back, we are talking Wire for the final time. We're doing our Wire recap. Stay tuned. For the past 5 weeks, we've unpacked HBO's The Wire on a season by season basis, drilling down into each season of this groundbreaking police procedural in detail. Today, we're finishing up our marathon with the final segment, in which we'll discuss our favorite scenes, characters, and storylines. This has been a wonderful journey, and I've really enjoyed digging back into one of my all time favorite pieces of pop culture from a new angle with you. Justin, kick us off with your top three favorite characters.
All right. I mean, I completely, fretted over this, but then I don't know. At some point, it just became clear. Number one for me is Bubbles. I think Bubbles' story arc over the course of the 5 seasons is the most complete story that they tell, from the baseline first season where he's, a junkie CI informant, but you see these little brilliant flashes in him. You can tell that he's a different breed of junkie right from the start. And where you get all the way to the end of the season, or the end of the fifth season, where he's clean, he's working, and he's rebuilding the relationships that he destroyed, most notably with his sister. That falls into one of my top 3 scenes. The scene where his sister finally invites him to come up out of the basement is just, it's everything, man. To me, it's just absolutely a testament to how well written and how well performed the show was. That is a moment that you've been waiting for 5 seasons to see her see what we all see in Bubbles.
For sure. An incredible moment.
All right. So after that, Frank Sabatka, I'm a season 2 lover for sure. It's my, I don't know. After this, I don't know if I will say that it is my favorite season, but it is definitely first or second. Season 3, 4, or season 4 is just so good with the kids. But Frank Sabatka, I love the character, love the arc. Blue collar guy that just wants to do right by his friends and his family and his coworkers, and just gets completely caught up in the mix of a buzzsaw that he just can't get away from. And then my out of out of the norm pick is Carver. I love Carver's story arc. I love how Carver kind of goes from a bit of a knucklehead to being one of the better, forces in the Baltimore Police Department throughout the show. And he steadily is promoting and steadily, moving up and taking responsibility. And it's neat to see him go from the knucklehead to the person that's taking responsibility.
I like that pick. I like all those picks, actually. Yeah, Sabatka. That's a bold choice because, man, that guy's such a hot-headed asshole. Like he's the kind of guy that, like, if I worked with him, I'd hate that dude.
If you were friends with him, he would give you the shirt off his back. He would do whatever he needed to. And I know plenty of those people that they're kind of a jerk, but they also have a big heart. And that's, and he got really done dirty in the end. You know what I mean? He was, so close to kind of getting out of it. And in that last moment.
Yeah. All right. So for my top 3 characters, I gave myself a rule. I said I'm going to do one cop, I'm going to do one criminal, and then I'm going to do one other character. So I'm going to take him in reverse order.
That's kind of what I did.
In my number 3 spot, this is my other character. I got Gus Haynes. He's the editor from the Baltimore Sun, and I was trying to figure out what it is about this guy that I like about him, and it's totally obvious. He's a guy that's in the same situation that I've been my whole working life, which is like trying to do the best and pushing back against bosses and companies that don't really care about the best. They got other priorities, and integrity is not there. It's, making money and or just things being easy for the managers and the bosses and the owners and stuff like that. Not being right, just being easy, we were just looking for the smoothest possible way to get to the finish line. And I just love that guy. I mean, he just seems so wise and sees right through that dude that's turning in the fake stories and stuff like that. And he just, I don't know, he seems so honest. So I love that guy. He's my number 3. So number 2, I've got my cop, and that's gonna be Daniels. And
Cedric Daniels.
The reason I picked him is because because he sort of like occupies that space between like the guys on the street and the guys at the top, but he's there in the mix between all of them, and he's just he's a complex character because he's functioning as a manager, and he's always got a lot of balls in the air, both below him and above him. I mean, he is as much a politician on that show as anybody is, and he's got he's got demons for his past. He seems like a Boy Scout. He seems like so by the book and straightforward and blah blah blah. But he's got stuff in his past, and the show does an amazing job of sort of hinting at it.
but
And
never
there's
really letting you in on it.
yeah, and there's an absolutely incredible scene between him and Burrell, where like Cedric basically wins it in the end, because in the end he's like, "Look, man, this is about real police, and if you think I'm going to sell them out, I'm not selling them out." Like, I can't even remember exactly what it was. There's so many.
He has
So many
he gets a
details.
he gets a ton of great like tete-a-tete,
So good.
scenes with people, and the big forces on the show with like he gets some, he has scenes with Rawls and scenes with Carcetti and scenes with Rhonda Perlman and with McNulty, and where he can either be the subordinate or the
The
boss. Yeah.
boss.
So it's really, I mean, he's really dynamic in that sense. Lance Reddick, man, what a win. Rest in
May he rest
peace.
in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude, and he can leave a room. Like, that guy can end a conversation, take the last word, stand up in his suit, and walk out. All
And
right,
he
my
has
number
he
one.
has that gravitas too. That's just like,
Oh yeah,
you know that he could be, that he could have it in the streets, but he just has that way that he holds himself that's so damn good. And like, and especially, I feel like season 1 is one of his better seasons because he's in the mix, and like he knows what he needs to do. He's the guy that always knows what he needs to do, and knows that doing it sometimes is impossible. But man, what a great character. Very good choice.
love that guy. All right, for my number one, this is my criminal. I got to go with Snoop. Love Snoop so much, and I think it's a good pick because Snoop represents a lot of what this show is about. She's basically like, or it was at the time, essentially a non-professional actor from Baltimore, so she is just dripping with authenticity. Um, it's so cool to see this show put a young black female character in a role that is a total badass. And this chick is a badass. She doesn't necessarily look like a badass. She doesn't talk like a badass, but she is a badass.
And never at
Um,
one point does anybody question her street credibility.
yeah, yeah, and she holds it, baby. Like, they know not to f with this woman. Um, and her patois that she speaks with is so great. I mean, she has got some just really juicy dialogue, which I'm sure just sails over a lot of people's heads that, are not even like understanding what she's saying. But yeah, just an absolutely compelling character, and she's partnered up with Chris Partlow, another like just really, really interesting
Force of nature character.
character. Yeah, just the two of them together, they just are the most like unlikely pairing, and yet so compelling. Like, you just cannot take your eyes off Chris Partlow anytime he's on screen, and the two of them together are amazing. Um, and she's gonna come back up again here in a little bit when we get to our
Well, and
favorite scene. So
you brought up the scene. I think it was a couple, like 2 weeks ago or whatever.
don't spoil my favorite scene.
No, not that one. Not that one. No, the scene where Michael shoots her in the car,
Mm.
and she just has that moment where she turns her head and she's like, "How's my hair look, Mike?" And Mike's like, "It looks good, girl." And you just like
Yeah,
such a
and it's like What an incredible note to have her character go out on, because I really don't think up until that moment that at any point did they show her as like caring about her femininity, her looks, or anything. And at the very end, they're like, "Oh yeah, just in case you forgot that this is a human character,
Hmm.
she's worried about how her hair is going to look after she's that incredible." All right, go with your top three scenes.
All right, so my first one obviously is the fuck, the infamous fuck scene.
Fucker. Fuck. Oh, fuck. Fuck it. Oh, fuck. Motherfuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Fuck, 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 fuck. Motherfucker. Fucking A. Motherfucker. Fuck me.
Which is, the scene where Bunk and McNulty go to the crime scene in season 1 where D'Angelo's girl had been killed and Weebay was like outside, and they go in and they're like rehashing the crime scene, and the only thing that they say is versions of the word fuck. They're just like fuck, 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 the whole time, and you're just like, you could just say that it's vulgar, and you could dismiss it as something that, they're just trying to be provocative. But it also just shows you how good those two were together, and the way that they choreograph that whole scene. It's just amazing. It's one of the best like long cuts scenes that I've ever seen in anything. Outside of that, the my next one is a very personal to me. When Slim Charles kills Cheese in season 5, I absolutely love that. It's really throwaway. He's like it's our time, bow, and he's like, that was for Joe. And then I had already talked about my other one was when Bubbles actually gets invited to dinner by his sister. That's one of my favorite scenes. I feel like it culminates that character's story so well. How about you?
Interesting. Well, another great dinner scene is when what's his name? I can't. But Buddy Colvin takes the
Naaman.
kids out to dinner.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, there's two good dinner scenes with Naaman. The dinner scene at Bunny's house and when he takes them out. Those are both really good scenes.
Interesting. We could write a whole article about
Yeah.
dining scenes in The Wire. All right, I want to throw out a couple of ones just quickly that are not on my top three, but that are just like so great. The three-way death of Stringer Bell, Brother Muzone, and Omar. Omar robbing the poker game. Boy, you got me confused with a man who repeats himself. The wake of Cole, like the police wake, with that fat dude like making all those toasts and stuff.
When they do it to Jimmy in season 5 or whatever, it was season 5. They do it with Jimmy, but he's alive.
Right. How about Chris Partlow saying to Bodie, where the boy at, Michael? Bodie's like, he ain't no regular. He's just working off a debt. Why you care? Partlow's like, never mind why. I ain't your repertoire no more. like you don't ask me why, bro. All right, so I'm gonna give you my top three in reverse order. Number 3, I just got to go with, just because it's just so fun to watch, so gratifying, is when Sidnor serves Clay Davis and Clay Davis loses his mind. Like, you are serving me? What? Wait. Like, just, oh God.
Clay Davis was a great character.
All right. In the number 2 spot, I referenced it earlier. It's season 1, episode 12. It's Daniels versus Burrell. If you want to see just the genius of police on police confrontation in that show, Season 1, Episode 12, Daniels versus Burrell. And that man stands up and buttons that suit at the end of that conversation. You're just like, oh, yeah, Cedric, I will go to the end of the world with you. Take me there. Um, and so for my number one, I got to go with Snoop buying the nailer. It's just so great. The way she is, the way she talks makes her seem so street, so gangster, and yet she makes a connection with this guy. I love the respect that this salesman at that store gives her, breaks it all down for her, and she's listening. I mean, stuff is not going over her head. She knows exactly what her mission is. She knows exactly what she needs this gun for. She knows that this is the one. She hands the guy a wad of like $800 for like a $620 nailer. The guy's like, no, to the front. She's like, nah, man, you earned that ammo, like you put me on. So it's like, she's a good tipper, you love her because she's like throwing some cash to the sales guy, you know what I mean? And then the best part is when she gets back out to the car, with Chris, he's like, so everything cool with all that? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, so is it going to hold the charge better? Because that was their problem. They were using like battery powered nailers. He's like, going to charge better. And she's like, man, fuck a charge. This here is gunpowder activated, 27 caliber, full auto, no kickback, nail throwing mayhem, man.
You good?
Yeah, man. Man said if you want to shoot nails, this is the Cadillac, man. He mean Lexus, but he ain't know it.
Hold the charge better?
Man, fuck a charge. This is gunpowder activated, 27 caliber, full auto, no kickback, nail throwing mayhem, man. Shit right here is tight. Well, fuck this nail nut boys. We can kill a couple motherfuckers with this right here. You laughing? I'm in school, dog. Trying to tell you.
Like, what a great, it's like she's describing a gun and yet she's like actually describing a power tool. Man, that scene, so great. So that's gonna be my number one. And with that, we're gonna have to put a pin in it because we're already way over time on this segment. So The Wire, an amazing show. I really enjoyed doing this with you.
If you haven't watched it, you're missing out.
Get on it. All right, so we'll be back in just a moment with our ride in the Broom Wagon. Stay with us. All right, we are back, and it's time to take a ride in the Broom Wagon. Justin, what do you got for us this week?
Real easy one for me, something that I listened to this week that I think if you're a fan of cycling, you will absolutely love to hear it. And if you're a fan of American cycling, I encourage you to go. The Geraint Thomas Cycling Club podcast, him and Tom did a interview with Kristen Faulkner, who obviously won Olympic gold this year. And the story of just her story in general and her interview with Geraint and Tom is just so good. It's worth the hour that you will donate to it. And I just encourage you to go out and listen to that. It was a tremendous interview. Those guys get great guests, but that interview in particular really hit home with me. I thought it was just really, really good. I love the story. I love her, and I hope that she has all the success in the future.
Great recommendation. I heartily concur, and I love the Geraint Thomas cycling. It's really good. All right, for my Broom Wagon, Stage 12 of the 2022 Tour de France saw the peloton take on the iconic Alpe d'Huez after taking out the Galibier, the Telegraph, and the Croix de Fer. It was the final stage in the Alps. Pog had lost 3 minutes to Jonas the day before, and after the Croix de Fer, a breakaway group established itself at the front of the race. There were 6 riders in all: the American Nilson Paulus, Giulio Ciccone, Niels Pollitt, Louis Meintjes, Tom Pidcock, and perhaps most unlikely of all, 4-time Tour de France winner Chris Froome. In 2022, Froome was in his second year with Israel Premier Tech and had had little success since his 2019 crash. A great champion and a born racer, Froome methodically struggled on, trying to compete, trying to contribute to his team, trying to stay relevant. All of his efforts seemed to be saying, I wasn't ready to be done. I had more greatness greatness in me. I have more greatness in me. But as time wore on, it was evident that whatever hopes Froome might have had of ascending the heights he'd achieved before were gone, and that his time had passed, that he was a shadow of the rider he'd been in the glory days. But then, here he was, in the front group on the Alpe d'Huez in the Tour de France. At 12K to go, he seemed to be faltering, just barely hanging on to the back of the group, as Tom Pidcock, the darling of the team Chris Froome, had cemented in the history books, INEOS, began asserting himself at the front. But Froome kept turning the pedals over in that signature Froome style, elbows flared out, head down, a physical geometry intimately familiar to those of us who'd seen him, who'd followed him, who'd been blown away by him back in the heyday. He hung in. Soon Powless, then Ciccone, then Pollitt all slipped off the back, while only Meintjes and Froome could stay near to Pidcock. Ultimately, the English mountain biking champion, the mad downhill artist Tom Pidcock, proved too much for the chasing duo and enjoyed his own moment of sublime glory at the finish line on that storied hill. Meintjes hung on and was the better of Froome in second. But the champion of old had hung on himself for a convincing third on the stage. A podium position on the Alpe d'Huez, one of the greatest climbs in the history of the greatest race in all of history. The six-time Grand Tour winner and most successful British Tour rider of all time showed his face and his class once more on the world's biggest stage. And while I was elated to see the brash and cocky but somehow so likable Tom Pidcock make good on the promise that he showed when he came aboard the vaunted British squad, the nostalgic in me couldn't help but pine for the thrill of the days when I first got back into following professional cycling. After those years in the wilderness post-Lance Armstrong, when cycling had broken my heart and the pull of relationships and work and family kept my attention elsewhere. In 2013, I moved with my young family into a new house, and the following year we decided on a whim to subscribe to a cable television package which included NBCSN, the NBC Sports Network, and current carrier of the Tour de France in the U.S. I watched that year as Froome crashed out and Vincenzo Nibali took his only tour win, the only tour win for any non-Sky Ineos rider in the midst of the team's dominance of 2012 to 2019. During those years, when I'd been away from pro cycling fandom, I'd become a devotee of podcasts. And when I jumped back into watching bike races in 2013, I coupled that with listening to many different pro cycling podcasts, and a cycling superfan was born. I got in deep, and not just to the tour, but to all of the cycling calendar, both on the men's and women's sides. I couldn't get enough. And of course, I witnessed Chris Froome's dominant years, Sea of Team Sky, the miraculous Vuelta comeback. I saw every bit of it. Happened to Chris Froome sucked, and I have no doubt that had that crash never happened, he'd have won another Grand Tour, possibly more than one. But it was not to be. Froome has given his heart and every bit of dedication he possesses to professional cycling, and he remains a great and worthy hero to worship. The hero fell as heroes do, but on that special day in July of 2022, he reminded us of the old lion that wasn't about to go quietly into the night. Thank you, Chris Froome, for all that you've given us. And that will be all for this week. Join us next week as we recap the Women's Tour Down Under and preview the men's race. And we'll catch up with one of the talked about films of 2024, the indie horror thriller Longlegs, starring the always awesome Nicolas Cage. Until then, for my brother Justin, I'm Matt Harper. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll tune in next week for another ride beyond the slipstream. Ale! Beyond the Slipstream is a production of Harperama. Find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please like and subscribe, smash that button, leave a 5-star review, and most importantly, tell all your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Ale!